Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down with Brian Level. You should know the name. Brian Level has worked on some major books for all the major publishers, as well as a slew of indie titles. Really awesome guy. It was really cool, honest, fun conversation. Talking to Brian's like talking to an old friend, even though this is the first time I've ever talked to him. So that was a really cool feeling. He's also a tattoo artist. That probably has a lot to do with it. He's got to talk to strangers all day long and, fill hours and hours while he's doing a different kind of art right on them. He has a crowdfunding campaign going right now for his book, The Brothers James. The Brothers James is a long time in the making. We get into that in the interview, so I don't need to rehash it here. But the book looks awesome. It's a revenge story. It's a story about two brothers, the family aspect of it. It's got some heart to it. It's got some humor to it. And it's styled in like a grindhouse, gritty, kick-ass kind of way. We mentioned in the interview, it looks like something that Robert Rodriguez would direct. It's two brothers in a muscle car taking down an old biker gang. Like, it's everything you want those fun, pulpy, in the best of terms, movies, comics, stories to be. I know I keep going to the movie thing, even though he's crowdfunding a comic. He's crowdfunding it on Zoop. It was a new site to me. The link's going to be in the description, so make sure you check it out. It looks really cool, really fair price for everything you're getting, and not too far away. The work is just about done, so it's really just fund it, print it, ship it. So enjoy the interview and check out The Brothers James on Zoop. Link in the description. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Wizard Podcast, and I'm sitting down with Brian Level to talk comics and your newest comic, The Brothers James. So how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming on. This should be fun.
Yeah, I get to talking, so look out.
That's fine. That's what you're here for. Before we get to The Brothers James, which does sound awesome, and it's crowdfunding right now, we should put that up front. How did you get your start in comics? Because you've worked everywhere. You've done a lot.
Yeah, so Brothers James is one of those things. I got my start in I guess if you want to be technical, like when I broke in, so to speak, was as an inker. I was mentored by Stefano Godiano. I think people might know him from Gotham Central. He was Michael Lark's inker for ages on Daredevil and Gotham Central, Lazarus. And then he started inking Charlie Adler on Walking Dead. Most recently, it was over Trevor Hairsine on Deceased, but that's kind of like my lineage as far as an inker. And Stefano was the one who kind of brought me in when Valiant relaunched in 2012. But prior to that, I was doing independent books and kind of self-publishing and stuff. And The Brothers James was actually one of those things.
Oh, so that was a really early on project.
Yeah, we started it ages ago and just kind of worked on it slowly because we were all working in various capacities. Like, kind of, I hate the term up because I think it's dishonest, but working your way up through the industry, which I technically think is maybe through different doorways. But as we were kind of moving through these different capacities of work for hire and this, that, and the other, like, production slowed down and down and down as we became more in demand. But it's something we've always loved and we always wanted to finish. And so that's kind of what we're doing now.
Awesome. Okay. So you said you were trained. I didn't quite catch the name. Sorry, I'm terrible with names.
That's all right. Stefano Godiano is his name. He's Italian.
Okay. Was that your only formal comics training?
Yes. And I guess even that is a little dishonest. Like, when I say he was my mentor, he wasn't like my teacher. He was like more mentor. So he brought me on because I was doing independent books. I had done a couple of things that were kind of experimental, a couple of things that were more straightforward. And I was a big fan of his. I friended him on Facebook. I just kind of DM'd him one day, just telling him how much I liked Gotham Central and how it was one of my favorite books ever. And we kind of started dialogue. And one day, apparently, he checked out my art on my Facebook page and was kind of like, "Is this all you? Are these your inks? Da 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 da. Where are you working? Like, because this is all really good, and I'd like to check out more of your stuff." Yeah. So Stefano was like kind of I think one of those guys who could make things consistent. So if you look at his Daredevil run, he had inked like David Aja and Michael Lark and several people actually in a row, and Tansi Zanjic, if that's how you say his name. I'm terrible, but all of them look like the same artist because Stefano had such a unique, like, kind of like definitive way of doing things. And he was kind of like, "Hey, is this your art? I like it. Like, are you working professionally? This, that, and the other." And then we kind of started dialogue there. And his sort of thing was like, I sometimes will take on more projects than I can do, so I can pass on those extra pages. Like, so if he can do 1.5 books a month, he'll take on 2 books and then pass off 12 pages to the people that he kind of like has, I guess kind of mentored in a way, and make sure that everybody has work and all that stuff. And so he would, do that. And he was like, so if you're interested in anything like that at any point, let me know. I'm working with Valiant right now. They're about to relaunch. This is when Dinesh and Warren relaunched in 2012. And I said, sure. So I showed up on Bloodshot #1. He had kind of tested me out on a few, like he had Butch Weiss pages and some Michael Lark pages. I was extremely familiar with Michael's work because I loved his art, and I still do to this day. But he was like, here, ink these pages, and then I'll look at them. So I inked like 3 pages or 2 pages or something, and he gave me some notes. And he was like, maybe try this a little differently. You'll get a little more clarity if you do X, Y, or Z. Here's another page if you want to try those techniques out. So we went through about 4 or 5 test pages before he felt like I was ready. And then I was on Bloodshot #1 over, was it Miguel Garcia or Manuel Garcia? And Manuel was really good, tight pencils, so it was easy for me to learn on. And then Stefano had some more notes, and I probably worked with him for, I would say, about 3, 4, 5, 6 issues before, he was kind of like, yeah, do whatever you want, like you're on it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was really, really, really grateful for that experience.
So you went from self-taught, doing your own indies, right into, I guess you'd call it the big leagues, but like you were saying, you don't want to put down the indies because the indies are also great.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. And honestly speaking, like it took me, like it was about a year into doing Valiant stuff maybe before Stefano got offered Lazarus, which was Michael and Greg's project. If anybody reads Image Comics, they're probably vaguely familiar with it. And like Michael wanted him to start inking him again because Michael was inking himself on Lazarus and then just got behind by issue 3. And so Stefano was like, just got offered the Walking Dead gig, which was going to be a long-term multi-year gig. So he was like, I can only jump in to help for this issue, Michael, but I have a guy that I think is really good. And Michael was like, yeah, sure, let's try him out. And it was funny because like Michael gave us, I think, 6 pages. So I took 3 and Stefano took 3, and then we turned them in. And Michael was like, okay, cool. Like since we're trying them out, like which ones are his? And Stefano was like, well, which ones do you think are his? And he's like, well, just tell me. And he's like, I can't really tell. And he's like, well, if you can't tell, then you got the job. And so that was that. So I got the job. And I worked with Michael for about a year before I got a job at, Shadowline. Jim Valentino approved a creator-owned book at Image at the Shadowline imprint of Image, and Ed Brisson and I and Jordan Boyd did a creator-owned book called The Mantle over there, and that was kind of what got me started as a penciler.
That's really cool. So your skill set also extends beyond inking.
I mean, I'd like to think so, but that's up for debate. If you read the reviews online, I think there's a bit of contention there.
Really? Okay. Well, it's online, so take that with a pound.
Yeah, well, honestly, like I kind of almost welcome I feel like if you don't feel anything, like it's not worth it, I'd rather people be pretty divided than just kind of be like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. You don't want the lukewarm response. You want love or hate. You want an extreme.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I feel like that reaction is generated from the artist having a point of view, and I feel like I have a point of view. I think it's more evident in my creator-owned and my indie work than it is in my Big Two work. I think partially because I'm such a fan of when I work at Big Two. I'm like such a fan, so I'm always trying to mitigate myself and kind of like try to step out of the way a little bit for these characters and this lineage and these other, and maybe that doesn't produce the best art. So maybe everybody's like, any criticisms that come my way are not always terribly unfounded. But part of it's just me trying to play it safe because I love the characters. When I do my own stuff, I'm a lunatic.
That is actually something I was curious about, is when you start working for an IP that you've grown up with or loved or a huge fan of, aside from working on it, do you feel like a lot of pressure? And is there also kind of a responsibility to not put too much of your own flavor into it?
So I would say that the pressure for me actually doesn't happen when it's doing the work. I really only feel any of that pressure right before it comes out, because I'm pretty good at divorcing myself from the labor part. But it's the reaction. It's actually this. I'm a tattoo artist, and it's the same thing with tattooing. Is like I actually don't feel nervous prepping the design or tattooing it. It's like right when the design's getting done and they're about to look at it, that's when like I finally catch my like nerves ticking up a little bit, because I want to make sure that they like it. And it's the same thing with like the comics. Is like Batman and Bigby came out this past week, and it was like this, it's like probably arguably the biggest release of my career. I actually think Thanos sold more. I'm not 100% sure. I don't have the numbers on Batman yet, but this was like arguably the biggest release of my career. And I got a little nervous that the couple days before it came out, where I was like, "Oh shit, is anybody?" I swear sometimes. Is that allowed?
It's fine. No, don't worry about
Okay, okay.
it.
So yeah, I kind of got scared a little bit, and I was like, "Oh my god, is everybody gonna hate this or what?"
Yeah, I can definitely try to put myself in that headspace, but I've never had a Batman book come out. That's really really awesome.
Well, I mean, I could say the exact same thing up until last week. So,
There you go.
well, actually, I did get the pleasure of inking over who I think is maybe arguably the best artist working at the Big Two. I got to ink over Riley Rossmo, and that was like a real delight. Riley's a just a championship human being and one of like the best artists that there is working. So it was a joy to get to ink over him on issue 52 before Rebirth started. So that was cool. I did 8 pages of inks over him.
Well, that is cool. Yeah. So when you're saying inking, are you 100% traditional like India ink, or do you delve into digital also?
It depends on the project and the deadline. I've done a couple of projects where I've kind of split the difference. Like my Avengers run that I did was all digital inking. About 5 pages of my Inhuman stuff was digitally inked. But in a general sense, I am ink on board. I prefer that about every possible way. I like the feel of it. I feel like I can be more creative. I have a better understanding of how the final page is going to look. I just like it better.
The more tactile feel of it.
Yeah, it's uglier, like the board for me, like there's some people where they produce much prettier work on the board. My stuff is uglier than it is digitally, but I prefer the ugliness.
It kind of I don't know if I would use the word ugly because I've looked at a lot of your art before we did this. I've actually read some of your books just completely aside, not even putting two and two together.
Mhm.
Um,
I
I
guess
wouldn't call
I don't use ugly as a pejorative. I actually like the way it looks that way.
Okay, I figured you were. Yeah, I figured
Yeah.
you were loving it. I was just trying to find the word that I would use because if I said, "Oh, hey, I liked your work in this," even though it was kind of ugly, you might say, "What the hell?"
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, I think when people have the balls to say that to your face, like they mean it in a nice way. And if someone looks you dead in the eyes and is like, "Your shit was ugly," it's kind of like, "All right, bro. Like, what do you want me to do about it?" Like, that's how I draw.
Yeah,
When I look at like Frank Robbins stuff, right? Like Frank Robbins is one of my favorites, and that dude draws ugly as shit, and I just love it. Like there's something crude and swoopy and kind of like strange about how everything looks. There's not like, and it kind of like does this circle of like it just kind of generates a new kind of beauty because it's stepped out of like the commercial like Claire. Like Mark Silvestri draws the prettiest stuff there is. Like to me, as far as like every line just is like this beautiful sort of like sketch. It's just a perfect confluence of beauty to me. Whereas like you move over into like Kelly Jones, like where everything starts to get real ugly, but the technique is beautiful. Frank Robbins almost is like everything's ugly, and there's like, and I love that about it so much. Where I just hits me in my soul.
that's cool. I'm gonna
May-
be.
Maybe maybe by ugly I mean like there's no artifice to it to me. Like it's like all of the decoration is gone and you're just seeing like the raw like expulsion of art, and that's what I really like.
That's
Sienkiewicz
kind of
is
what I
that
was
way.
understanding in my head is that maybe digital's like these lines are a little too perfect or too clean, and there's no bleeding
Yeah.
or anything that there maybe should be for a comic book.
Yeah, and my language is really bad. I'm like I have I'm not an academic in this way. So if anybody takes offense to this, I hope that they don't see it as me trying to take a shit on Frank Robbins, but instead I'm trying to elevate him.
Oh yeah, that didn't come across as negative at all. You're praising his work. So, when you were doing indies, were you writing, penciling, inking like across the board? Or did you have a small team with you?
It depends on the project. So the very first thing I did with an old friend of mine. And I kind of had some input. We talked the story out together, and then he decided he was going to script it. So he scripted it, and he could draw too. He's a good artist. So I drew. It was a 16-page story. I drew 12 pages. He drew 4, and we self-published it. And so it was like I had story input, and I drew most of it. I colored it all and did the pre-press and all that, so it was ready for print. Lettered it and all that. I don't say that to talk about how much labor I did so much as just how familiar I am with the process. And then after that, we didn't really do much. We ended up having somebody. I got in the midst of drawing a couple of other things for people. I had a couple different writers I worked with that we were just doing short stories to post online. And then I started writing a crime caper and a superhero book. I drew 1.5 to 2 issues of a superhero book that was just essentially me trying to like experiment with storytelling and layouts and stuff like that. At the time I was reading a lot of Gabriel Hardman stuff. And Gabe has this unique way of playing with grid where everything is hyper clear, which is, I think, comes from his background in storyboarding and just like extremely clear compositions. But then on top of it, he does these interesting things with layouts where it's still a grid, but it's not a grid. And it's not weird like David Aja, where he like deconstructs what a grid even is. It's something a little different. I was studying that. I was studying old comics that I like 80s Marvel stuff, and I eventually kind of just did the superhero thing to experiment with that. But then the crime caper was me trying to kind of like move into like a Sean Phillips, Gabe Hardman, like that like crimey stuff that I feel like I could imagine them doing. Chris Somney, like Frank Robbins, that sort of thing. So I was kind of playing with all sorts of stuff, and I was writing both those. And then the Brothers James got offered to me while I was in the midst of that. And next thing you know, I'm working on Brothers James and banging out issues of that. And then Stefano comes along and I'm working with him, and it's off to the races.
That's really cool. And how do you have time to do however many pages you're required to do for, I guess I'll say, your day job? I don't know what the proper term would be, like your big publishing work, maybe something Stefano would have passed you, and to have indies going on the side.
Well, generally it's, there is, because of production schedules, like I haven't had anything on the market since February, I think. And before that, I don't think I had anything on the shelves for over a year. And a lot of that stemmed from everybody kind of forgot about the year of COVID. So that kind of like, I worked at the beginning of the pandemic, I worked on Lucifer and I did 2 issues of that. And that was I think it was a 5-week turnaround on those pages. So I was doing 3 to 4 pages a week on that. And that didn't even bother to come out until February. It came out in a trade. So like, I think I was done with it 9 months before it came out, maybe more. This Batman project I've been on since last August. So the amount of time that I have is really variable. Like sometimes I'll get asked to do, like I remember when I was doing Absolute Carnage, that separation anxiety story over at Marvel. And we were so far ahead of schedule that Devin was my editor on that, kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, can you fit in like 3 single pages to tie into the event that will be in the back of Hulk and Invaders and stuff? So I was like, well, yeah, of course, because we were ahead. So it's really just depends on the project,
All right. So you just kind of find the time along the way and.
Yeah. And, like sometimes the time, sometimes you look at your bank account and you find the time because you need to. Other times you find that you don't have the time because your bank account is doing okay and you want to spend more time with your kids. So it's a 6 of one, half dozen the other. Sometimes like the number of hours doesn't really matter. Sometimes you move a little faster. Sometimes you prioritize other things. It's I just stay flexible and try not to worry about much of anything.
I guess that's the discipline of any kind of freelancer, self-employed in a way, self-scheduled.
Well, I've been self-employed. My tattoo shop's been open it'll be 10 years in April. And
oh, wow.
I've worked as a tattooer for almost 20 years. So like I've kind of learned the discipline of hustle and work and late nights and, early mornings. And I've never learned the art of the sort of day of rest, so to speak. And I actually think that's extremely toxic, and I'm paying the price for it now. And so that's like kind of my wife and I talked about next year, kind of like trying to work rest into our schedule. I'll be 40 next year, and I just don't think it's reasonable to work in the way of which I have worked. So I found the time, but I don't think it's wise all the time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Sometimes you have to kind of find how to work smart and not quite as hard. But then,
yeah, or just say no. Just saying no. If there's one thing I've realized in comics, this is maybe like I don't know. I don't even know how to take what I'm about to say, so you can take it for whatever. The ladder doesn't exist. I'll just say that. Like the whole time you're fighting in comics, you feel like you're making your way up a ladder, and the ladder is just an illusion. Like we're always afraid of falling off of it, not having something come out, and then losing our place. Like, what if we fall out of relevant? And I'm just like, man, none of this is real. Like all that's real is like making the best thing that you can make. And that's the thing that took me, I've been in this industry for 10 years now. And it took me probably 9 years to realize it, and now I'm kind of like really starting to understand that there is no ladder, and all the ladders are just made up by us. Like they're just imaginary. So I just have kind of decided to not, I just don't think that way anymore. I'm just here to make good stuff, and hopefully people like it, and if they don't, that's not my problem.
I think that's a good tip for people trying to get into comics.
Well, because when you see a ladder, you start to think that people are ahead of you or behind you, and you start to feel a certain way about yourself, and you start to feel a certain way about them. And I think that there's nothing more toxic than to adjust the value of a human being and a contemporary and people that are doing the same thing as you. When you start adjusting that value based on imaginary things, like everybody loses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll just weigh you down.
Yeah, or you'll start to devalue them, or you'll take less money because you don't want someone to get ahead of you, and so then everybody makes less money, or by like any number of things. I'm not saying people shouldn't take less money. If you're broke and you need to feed somebody, including yourself, like take the job, take where the money comes from. Like we all have to function in a practical way, but since we're talking immaterial, impractical things right now, like my like people that are vying for the same job as me, like are no less equipped or less valuable than me. So, I'm not here to like pretend that I'm more deserving of a job or less deserving of a job. I'm just a man, and if they want me for the job, then that's just it. Then I'm the guy for the job.
I feel like that attitude has to help a lot, stress wise.
Oh yeah, man. Like I don't care about much, really. Like I've gotten pretty good at being detached from the work end. I gotta admit, I get pretty attached to the quote unquote capital A like art of the thing. Like, am I being expressive and honest and like showing myself in the space? And that could eat me up. Like I'm not resilient to that yet. I'm sure over time that'll continue to grow. But if I feel like I'm not being a good artist, and I don't mean a draftsman, like obviously I'm always going to beat myself up about my draftsmanship. Like, oh, you can draw that better, you could do that better. But I'm talking about like the expression part. That part I still tend to stress over a bit, which is a problem.
That might not ever go away. Being an artist, you might always want to hold yourself to that high standard.
Right, and maybe that's the problem, is that I see myself as an artist instead of just Brian, and so I've got to like eliminate, maybe that label of artist, and just kind of be me and not worry about if I'm conforming to the container of artist. Like just conform to the container of me.
I see your point. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I probably sound like I'm talking junk right now, or like, but you're in my head right now, so this is what goes on in it.
No, that's great. That's good stuff. I try not to ask the same 6 boilerplate questions you've probably answered every day for the last, 10 years. So.
Oh yeah, man, you could ask me anything. You could ask me about, well, I won't go there, but you could ask me about it. Literally, I'm an open book, man. I don't.
Yeah, appreciate
that. All of my problematic, like weird, whatever the hell I am, like I'm an open book about it.
Awesome. All right. This is not such a deep delving question, but we should probably get into the brothers James.
Well, you never know where you're gonna
go. That's true. So you said someone brought that to you. So someone had a written script, or did they have pencils already, or?
So the story of the origin story, so to speak, of the brothers James is the book was started by Ryan Fair and a cartoonist that y'all may have heard of named Michael Walsh. Walsh is a genius and is doing some of his really early work. So he's not really super, like he's not super promoted in the project, because I don't think it's like a thing. We talked about it. It's not a thing that he's like, yes, like let's, this is a project he did with Ryan ages ago, and he's glad to leave it behind. Not that he's embarrassed of it or anything like that, but I have a hard time letting loose ends dangle. That's just not how I'm built. And so Mike had to leave the book because him and Ed Brisson got an Image book called Comeback. And so when he left, Mike and Ryan was the writer and co-creator of the book, Ryan Ferrier, had a conversation about who could possibly replace him, which, if you know anything about Mike's art, he's peerless, so nobody can ever replace Mike. But both of them brought me up. And so since both of them brought me up, they were both pretty jazzed to ask me. And so Ryan reached out and asked if I'd be interested in taking over for Mike, which of course is flattering and intimidating, but also like fuck it, So I kind of took, I said sure, and issue 2 was written, and I was off to the races. I had Mike's designs to roll off of, and Mike sort of like set the temperature of the book, and so I was just kind of there to try to raise the degrees a little bit, wherever I could. And I draw differently from him, but I think we share a lot of the same influences. And I feel like really took the identity over the book by the time we got to issue 3. Like I feel like it looked like my book and not as much Mike's book. By the time we got to issue 4, I had already kind of left what Mike was doing way behind me and was kind of building on what I was trying to do. And now that we have hit issue 5, some number of years have gone by, and anyone who's read the previous 4 issues, I'm sorry, I'm acting like I got like a cocaine nose. I don't know if I got like some old man nose hair growing or something, but by the time we got to issue 4, like the boys are kind of in a predicament. So, it's funny that as we've had a few years between the last issue and what we're doing now, the boys have had a few years as well. So we're kind of picking up in almost quite a natural place. And this time Ryan has since retired from comics as well. So I'm kind of like the weird, like buoy in the sea that's still just kind of like, hey, what about this book? And I reached out to Ryan and I was like, hey man, I don't want to leave this thing unfinished. We have 1 issue left. There's no reason like that we could just not, close the book on it. No pun intended. And he was like, yeah, totally. I just don't have time to write this. I'm not really, like I'm interested in like talking story with you, but I don't have the, the ability to like really put down the typing time. And I was like, well, is it okay if I write it? And he said, absolutely. So we had a couple of calls about story and what we wanted to do. And I fired over an outline of what I thought would be good. And he was really effusive and stoked about it. And so after we kind of got that, then I had been wanting to work with Eamon, who is drawing it, Eamon Hill. I am not drawing the last issue because I'm too busy drawing this Batman stuff. I was friends, I'm friends with Eamon. He's a tattooer in the Cincinnati area with me, and works at a friend's tattoo shop. And Eamon draws comics as well at Pigbone Comic. If you go to @Pigbone Comics on Instagram, you can see more of his stuff. But he's kind of a horror artist. We have a lot of the same influences. He's a huge Jack Davis fan, EC, all that stuff. So I was like, oh, Eamon is like a perfect fit for this, because that's all my, like a huge influence of mine is a lot of the EC guys, Johnny Craig and Jack Davis and those cats, Graham Ingalls. But we got to talking, and I was like, are you interested in this? I would love to have you draw it. I think like you're the guy. Eamon was the first guy I thought of, and he said yes. So next thing you know, we hopped back in the old Brothers James car and started heading down the highway, and here we are.
So you went from being brought onto an in-progress book to the one carrying the torch.
Yeah. I think that says more about my inability to let go of creative projects than it does anything.
Well, especially with 1 issue left, you've put in so much work already. It's just that much more to get it across the finish line.
Yes, it is. And
if you had done a couple character concepts and they'd said it didn't happen, it's like, all right, well.
Well, I think that speaks to Michael's position on the book too. Mike was kind of like, yeah, if you guys want to finish it, cool. Like my blessing, but like I'm not gonna, like, I don't have the time or energy to like try to promote it like it's my book or anything like that. And it's like, well, of course, why? I wouldn't expect that. I just don't want to do anything that's, since you're technically one of the progenitors of the project, like it made sense for me to. So we had a great conversation. Mike, I'm making Mike sound like he's trying to distance himself, and that's not the case. Like he just has life going on that's not the Brothers James, and I have life that's going on that's not Brothers James. I'm just a psycho.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't take it as a negative. It sounded like he just, like you said, life got in the way. He would have loved to see it be finished. He trusted you because you did so much of it. So take it and run.
Right. Yeah, and I'm so grateful for, literally, like, Ryan has become one of my best friends in my life. So to like have him as a creative partner that's willing to kind of endure. And what's funny is I'm such an asshole. Like this dude's been trying to be retired for like 2 years, and we haven't announced it. This might be the first I've ever spoken of it in public. But like Ryan and I have a graphic novel with another collaborator that I would announce, but I can't do that to break any. I don't want to cause trouble with the publisher, essentially.
Okay.
But Ryan will still have another book coming out next year that we co-wrote together. So I just can't get by to retire. Like I'm like dragging this dude through retirement. Like I feel sad about it, but it's like stuff that we've had in the hopper for years.
Yeah. You got to retire the right way.
Well, it's like cleaning up loose ends. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you can have a nice clean break.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's funny. So you're not only finish the work part of the book, but now you're doing the whole promotional circus, which is intense.
Yeah, Marcus is pretty accurate, and it's funny because I don't even have to do that much. I'm so not online. Like, if anybody sees me online, I'm usually just running my mouth about hardcore music or horror movies, and every once in a while just posting commissions or sketches that I've done. But like my general like online, I guess, presence is quite minimal. My wife yelled at me the other day. She's like, "Brian, you haven't posted a tattoo in 3 months," and I was kind of, are people still booking? And she was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay, so I guess it's fine, right?"
Yeah, they're all going to post the tattoo for you.
Right. I don't really care. But I do feel a little bad about not posting more. But Zoop showed up. Kind of part of their appeal was that they handle a lot of the process, and just try to like get just try to get the project handled in a way where I can just kind of worry about making it, and I have to do promotion and stuff like that. But the communication with people buying on the site, I don't have to do any of that stuff. Like I just kind of sit back, they handle all that, and they'll handle getting everything to the printers and distributing it and all that. I don't have to worry about anything like that. So it
Oh, that's
covers.
great. You just get to do the fun part.
Yeah. I mean, it's not fun for me to have to get on and like upload my own. I'd rather just retweet stuff, but it doesn't get the engagement. So like, I kind of like grumble, like, "Oh, I gotta like actually post an actual post and think about." Like, I'm just a bitch, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's good though. I was going to ask why Zoop, because it seems there's becoming more and more crowdfunding platforms. Like Kickstarter, probably the biggest one.
Yes.
Indiegogo's getting pretty big for comics, and I never heard of Zoop until this project. But it looks like it's a nicely put together site and everything, so they know what they're doing.
Yeah, Zoop has been interesting because I think their sales pitch to me, I hate sales pitch because it sounds so insidious. But like their kind of, I guess, their angle on the thing is that, well, if people are going to make comics and fund them, like they also hate having to deal with X, Y, and Z. So their service offers, I think, distinctly from Kickstarter and Indiegogo is that A, it's comic centric, and B, they handle a lot of the other stuff that nobody wants to do. So I think they're kind of on the reality that more and more books will be crowdfunded. I think they curate their line pretty carefully so that they can still allocate their resources to take care of these books and not like have too many that they kind of slip their control or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they kind of pick the cream of the crop so they can focus their efforts on it, is what you're saying?
I mean, I feel like saying the cream of the crop includes me in that, and I feel like that's a bit of an ego thing that I don't.
I didn't mean to put you in that order.
I would say the sentiment of what you're saying, yes, but I'm not. I try not to ever consider myself the cream of the crop as much as just a guy working. I'm terminally baller, bro.
Not putting words in your mouth.
I know. I just try not to like brag.
No, I get it. And did they put you in touch with the because you're working with a PR company too? It's how we got this conversation going.
Yeah.
Did they put you in touch? I was all part of it.
No, I kind of got in touch with Melissa and don't hide my. I don't know if like what I reached out to them because I knew that there would be a separate. Like I knew that what Don't Hide could offer was not going to be the same thing as what Zoop could offer. So it was a separate thing on my end that I reached out to, and they've been super communicative, super like talking to them was like, here's what I want. And they're like, okay, we hear you, here's what we can do. Like, and it's been also excellent, like they've kind of filled in two different blanks, I guess.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. We talked a good amount of how the Brothers James came about and how you got it done. Mm-hmm. We didn't really talk what it was about.
Sure. So I guess like the surfy sort of thing is two brothers whose parents were murdered when they were kids. These twins, 15 years later, decide to get their bloody revenge by driving around the southeastern United States, killing the remaining members of a defunct biker club that were responsible for their deaths. And I think that's kind of the general plot. But the story is really in the characters. It's two brothers that are dealing with their sort of direction in life and the life that they never got to have. The weird secrets that have been kept along the way between them and also in the world. Some cops that can't let go of prior crimes and also are not particularly trustworthy when it comes to getting the things that they want out of the current times. You have a lot of weird secrets and the sort of death of their parents, and a lot of family that's get uncovered in the process.
So it's got some heart to it too.
Yeah, it's a lot of heart. It's kind of funny. Like there's I think a lot of chuckles and laughs in it, while also some moments of violence. It's very heavily inspired by 70s sort of exploitation movies, road movies. You get a lot of that. I mean, it's funny because the comparison to Supernatural comes up quite a bit, because you got a long hair brother and a short hair brother and a Dodge Charger. So it's like, oh, it's like bootleg Supernatural. Like, I guess if Supernatural met Easy Rider, then sure. But it's not, it's not that really. Aesthetically, there's a lot of crossover in that first issue, but as the story progresses, you definitely see a lot of becomes a lot more about, I don't know, other stuff.
Yeah, I never picked up on the Supernatural comparison until you just broke it down.
A lot of people online were like, so Supernatural, with like the chin stroke emoji. Like, I don't know, do you like Supernatural? Because yeah, if you don't, then no, definitely not. I don't care. I want to get you to buy the book.
It sounded to me more like is Robert Rodriguez going to direct the movie version of this?
I mean, that is like the move, right? Like, I mean, like if you had to pick a guy to do it, like he's the dude to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've never even thought about it like really as a movie. But like I feel like, yeah, Craig Zoller would be like one of those, I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff. He did like Bone Tomahawk and
oh yeah, okay, yeah, he would be great.
Brawl and Cell Block 99. Just like, yeah, I mean, and his stuff's too. I don't know. Yeah, I think Rodriguez kind of has the same manic energy that I feel like the book would have. But yes, it's Robert Rodriguez road trip, twin brothers killing biker gangs.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
it's
Brian,
really
I don't want to.
Book.
Yep. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I was just saying it's a fun book. I had a lot of fun, and I think we really up crazy in the last issue too.
And how long is the Zoop thing going for?
I think it's like now, I don't know when this is coming out, but it's the 5th of October. I think it's got 25 days left. And I think our deliverable date is roughly January, I think is what plan is. I still have to kind of get that nailed down with them, but it's not long.
Not bad.
I mean, it's on its way. It's being like the page is done, like the last issue. It's an oversized last issue, so it's a little longer of a process, but not by a lot,
Very cool. Well, I don't want to eat up your whole afternoon. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. People should definitely check it out. I'm going to put the link in the description, too, so you don't have to write that down.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank Brian one more time for coming on the show to talk to me about comics, his process, his journey, the Brothers James, all of the above. Really cool stuff. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more interviews, a lot more new movie coverage coming your way. We got a pretty big round table going off tomorrow as of this recording and posting, so be on the lookout for that. You're definitely not going to want to miss out on that one. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, videos, and more. We love hearing feedback. Drop some note in the comments. Leave us something on social media. All of our accounts will be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, to keep things on comics, a good friend and I have our own comedy comic series out right now. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice of life, kind of coming of age, comedy comic, all about the high school experience, all the insanity that goes along with it. You can find all that and more at socialstudiescomic.com. We're all over social media. I do my best with it. Honestly, I kind of suck at social media, but check it out if you can. We do have a crowdfunding campaign going on right now for a couple more weeks where you can get in on our entire first chapter, either individual issues or a big softcover book where they're all compiled together for a rock bottom price. We'll never be able to offer this price beyond the Indiegogo. So check that out. Socialstudiescomic.com has all the information. I'm just rambling at this point because I had far too much coffee today. Thanks.